No man do they call me. My mother and my father, and all my comrades as well. Hey everybody, I know this isn't exactly the hot new item coming out from GW anymore, but I thought I would share my thoughts on the leagues of Votann from a lore perspective and how they fit in with the bigger picture of the Warhammer setting in general. So let's start with the basic concept. The leagues of Votann are basically dwarves in space. Now, archetypical dwarves are basically Tolkien dwarves. They live in mountains, they are great craftsmen and miners, they have proud and ancient traditions. They're also isolationist, they usually don't have big numbers, and they tend to be greedy and short tempered. Pun intended. I think GW mostly does a good job of translating dwarves into space and also fitting them in with existing lore, particularly with the Dark Age of technology. The very short description of what the leagues are. They are the remnants of Dark Age technology humans who formed empires around the core of the galaxy. Their cultures are built around fully functioning STCs that the leagues call ancestor cores. They're basically giant robot heads that are the foundation of all the kin's technology. Kin being the general term for league boys. Each league has their own ancestor core, and each ancestor core shapes the values of its league. So, yeah, so far so good. We have isolated dwarf boys with superior craftsmanship. Another interesting twist is that the kin still have AI. They have robot friends who work alongside them and are treated as citizens. They are known as the Ironkin. And I think that's a neat way to make AI a more active part of the lore instead of just being something that existed a long time ago and occasionally shows up in Archaeotech. Um, I think I like them overall. I think they're pretty good. There are a few things that I think would qualify as mistakes. Um, I think some people say that the leagues aren't grimdark enough. Some factions are more warlike within the league, but in general, they aren't as xenophobic as the Imperium, and have been described as they would rather trade than fight if possible. Um, in keeping them more with the whole dwarf thing, I would prefer them to be more xenophobic. That just fits more with the archetype of dwarves being holed up in their mountain fortresses. And it would also explain why no one has seen these guys for such a long time. And I don't really like the explanation of, well, they were in the core of the galaxy, so no one went there. I mean, I mean, there are reasons why you can't go into the core. It's full of radiation and all different kinds of stuff, but it's still a little odd, and it doesn't quite answer like why this fairly substantial empire hasn't been discovered earlier. So, in regards to them not being grimdark enough, I don't think it's a problem for them to be good guys, like to be actually pretty solid. Um, but I think it's important to have good guy factions in a grimdark setting. It's good to have hope, but I think the leagues are a little too good. So when I'm talking about like good guys, I mean a group of sentient sentient race that humans could conceivably successfully ally with, work with, trade with. If certain issues could be ironed out, if everyone was being reasonable, yeah, this group could conceivably get along. You can't really get along with Chaos or Orcs or Dark Eldar or I don't think you could for long get along with Necrons either. Um, so it's unlikely, but it's not impossible for humans to trade with the Tau or the non-BDSM Eldar or the Leagues of Votann. So the thing is, when it comes to good guys in a grimdark setting, they can't be too good. The Imperium is massive. They're quite powerful. They are a galaxy spanning. They have galaxy spanning might, uh, and that is despite the rod of 10,000 years. But they are cruel, corrupt, regressive, superstitious, hateful, and overall pretty miserable. So plenty grimdark, even though they're quote unquote good guys. Um, the Eldar and the Tau, the Craft World Eldar at least, are nicer, kind of. Uh, they're not needlessly cruel. But the Eldar are incredibly arrogant. They don't value human life, and they're a dying race. Now, living in the Tau Empire is going to produce, on average, a higher quality of life than in the Imperium, but you have to live under the weird rule of mind control ethereals who are, pals with cannibal chickens and weird bug things. The Tau Empire is also comparatively minuscule and they're very naive, so they have like weaknesses. The leagues of Votann, as far as we know with the lore we have, they're just kind of better. They have a substantial empire in the core. They have absurd Dark Age technology. They're generally speaking less totalitarian than the Imperium. On the whole, they're pretty good. They're not needlessly cruel or kind of ugly in the way that you expect grimdark stuff to be. In a way, they're kind of just better than all the other factions. So if I were to tweak the leagues just a little bit, I would make them fewer in number. I would say they should be less trusting of outsiders. Not that they are super trusting, but like they're from the lore I've seen, they seem to be weirdly open for a group that hasn't been seen for tens of thousands of years. I would prefer that they deliberately isolated themselves from the rest of mankind during the Age of Strife, and they remained a small hidden cluster of worlds at the core of the galaxy. I think that's sort of what they did, and now they're kind of poking their heads out because things are so messed up in the galaxy that there was a deliberate attempt to hide, but their culture doesn't really reflect that. That you've been tens of thousands of years in isolation. Um, their attitude towards others still seems a little soft for being a group of people that is convinced of their own superiority and has not talked to anyone forever. Um, I think that if you had them kind of remain as a small cluster of worlds at the core of the galaxy, maybe a couple systems or however many you want to do, and I'd put their numbers more in line with the Eldar or Tau. Um, at least from the lore I saw, it really sounds like they have a quite substantial empire with lots of different leagues, each with their giant robot head producing a constant stream of super tech. Um, if they were relatively open and numerous as described, it doesn't really make sense that they would have remained undiscovered until now. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I am not going to comment on their presence on the tabletop as the meta is likely going to change rapidly. I just wanted to give my thoughts on the league, on the leagues, from a lore perspective, and just kind of give an overview of my thoughts. I'm sure there's more details that I have yet to read or even mention on the new faction, but I kind of wanted to give my initial overall general reaction to the lore I've seen so far, and just talk about the parts that I thought were interesting. There's definitely more out there. I didn't go into any of the individual factions. There's lots of stuff, but I just wanted to kind of talk about them generally from the perspective of a writer and things that I would have trouble kind of dealing with if I were to have stories about the Leagues of Votann. I'm probably going to wait for more lore to come out before I start writing stories that at least heavily feature them. But yeah, thank you all very much for listening. Please like and subscribe if you like this little lore opinion piece. And if you would like to support me, there are links down below to my Patreon, my PayPal, and my Teespring. Thank you all once again for listening. No Man out.